There is a silent shift that begins around the age of 30. The body no longer runs on excess, it runs on refinement. When a man practices semen retention past this threshold, the effects do not feel merely physical, they echo through his entire system. The difference is not in the act itself, but in the contrast. A man who has spent decades scattering his energy suddenly experiences what it feels like to hold it. His nervous system recognizes the silence. The body, once accustomed to constant depletion, now learns the rhythm of accumulation. The same practice that might feel abstract to a 20-year-old becomes transformative for a 35-year-old, because he has already lived through the contrast between vitality and fatigue. Retention in later years is not an experiment, it is a return. There comes a point in every man's life when pleasure no longer satisfies, when the noise of the world becomes unbearable, and the body itself begins to ask for meaning instead of release. This is the threshold of transformation, the moment where the modern man, drained by anxiety, overstimulation, and spiritual fatigue, must decide whether to keep dissolving into distraction or reclaim the fire that was always his. Here on Shakti, Gods of Semen, we speak to that decision. This is not entertainment, it is initiation. Today you will understand why semen retention strikes harder after 30, and why what once felt like discipline becomes destiny. You will see how the aging body, once dismissed as decline, turns into a vessel of sacred chemistry. How energy once wasted in desire refines into wisdom, focus, and silent power. Stay until the end, because what you will hear are not theories but keys to reclaiming your essence and reversing the decay of modern masculinity. If this resonates in your chest, if you feel that inner pulse answering back, then you are meant to be here. Join this movement of awakening men, subscribe, activate the bell, and become part of the brotherhood guiding Gods of Semen toward 25,000 initiates. This is your summons to remember who you were before the world made you forget. After 30, testosterone levels begin a slow decline, roughly 1% per year. Society calls it aging. Nature calls it calibration. The masculine system adapts, demanding deeper forms of nourishment. Semen retention becomes a biological amplifier, a way of signaling the endocrine system to reclaim strength instead of submitting to entropy. What once leaked out through habit now feeds back into the bloodstream as purpose. The man who once chased stimulation now learns to generate it internally. He does not depend on external validation because his hormonal current begins to sustain itself. In youth, energy flows outward like a river without banks. The young body can afford waste, the older one cannot. But this limitation becomes the key to mastery. The man in his 30s and 40s no longer wants to burn, he wants to refine. His energy moves slower, denser, more deliberate. While the young release energy through instinct, the mature transform it into intention. Retention becomes less about control and more about conversion, turning raw desire into magnetic calm. He no longer wants to conquer, he wants to command from within. The essence of his power evolves from kinetic to alchemical. What was once a surge becomes a circulation. His semen, once treated as a byproduct, becomes the philosopher's stone of his own biology. Youth plays with energy as fuel for pleasure. Maturity treats it as sacred oil that lubricates awareness itself. The same seed that once created life now sustains consciousness. This is why retention hits harder after 30. It meets a man who finally understands what his energy is worth. The male body is not a static machine. It is a living alchemical vessel. As a man ages, his system becomes increasingly sensitive to how energy moves within it. During semen retention, the prostate, pineal gland, and endocrine network enter a state of recalibration. The prostate, long burdened by cycles of release, begins to regenerate. In that stillness, circulation improves, inflammation drops, and energy that once escaped through lust now rises through the spine as subtle current. Meanwhile, the pineal gland, the ancient seat of vision, benefits from this same conservation. Without the hormonal chaos caused by constant ejaculation, melatonin production stabilizes, sleep deepens, and the inner eye begins to clear. In older men, these effects are amplified because their metabolism no longer prioritizes excess. The body becomes strategic, recycling what once was wasted. Mitochondrial efficiency increases, sleep quality improves, and cellular repair accelerates. Many report that their skin regains tone, their eyes sharpen, and memory returns. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is energy economy. When life force is no longer burned in pleasure's furnace, it becomes the light that heals from within. Retention gives the mature man back his biological sovereignty. Then there is the matter of what ancient texts called the crystalline oil. This is the subtle essence refined from the conserved seed, an invisible nectar that rises toward the brain. It is said to nourish the higher centers of consciousness, coating neural pathways with clarity and strength. Whether interpreted symbolically or physiologically, its effect is unmistakable. Thought becomes luminous, intuition sharpens, and the man feels guided by a quiet intelligence rather than driven by impulse. Thus, the older body turns into a laboratory of sacred chemistry. Each gland, nerve, and cell begins to communicate in harmony. The same current that once caused distraction now fuels awareness. The young may experience energy as thrill, but the mature experience it as mastery. In him, the retention of semen ceases to be a struggle. It becomes a ritual of refinement. His very biology participates in awakening. As the body adapts to retention, the mind follows. In older men, the psychological impact of holding sexual energy is profound because the impulse is no longer seen as something to fight, but something to understand. The mature mind has already tasted indulgence and seen its cost. It knows that every release is an investment of power, and every conservation is an act of creation. The sexual urge becomes potential energy, fuel for focus, innovation, and spiritual depth. What once demanded gratification now demands direction. The ego, once intoxicated by conquest and validation, begins to transform. The man who used to measure his worth by the attention he received now measures it by the silence he maintains. The drive that once sought dominance over others redirects into mastery over self. Retention becomes the training ground for leadership because it teaches delayed gratification, the same discipline that separates the powerful from the ordinary. The libido ceases to be an instrument of pleasure and becomes a tool for creation, influence, and presence. After 40 days, the shift becomes visible. The mind steadies, attention lengthens, and anxiety fades. The nervous system, no longer jerked around by peaks of dopamine, returns to a natural state of calm alertness. Men who once chased distractions now find themselves drawn to purpose. Thoughts align, words slow, and focus turns razor sharp. This new state is not excitement, it is equilibrium. In this balance, clarity appears, and with clarity comes power. Carl Jung described libido not as sexual drive but as psychic energy, the source of creativity, spirituality, and transformation. When a man practices retention, he performs Jung's theory in real time. He transmutes base desire into refined consciousness. The same current that once fueled lust now fuels intuition. The same tension that once led to indulgence now leads to insight. Over time, the retained man no longer seeks control through force but through awareness. His calm is not passive, it is charged with quiet authority. He walks through chaos as if guided by an unseen compass, and others sense it without knowing why. With time, retention stops being a private discipline and begins to radiate outward. A man who sustains his seed develops an unmistakable presence, dense, grounded, and magnetic. His energy no longer spills into words or gestures. It condenses into silence. People feel it before they understand it. This aura is not the glow of youth, restless and scattered, but the steady pulse of mastery. It is the quiet charge of a man who carries himself with control, not as an act, but as a state of being. His calm becomes a frequency that reorganizes the atmosphere around him. Women sense this first. They register the lowered tone of his voice, the slower rhythm of his breathing, the steadiness of his eyes. The body broadcasts signals of authority and safety, pheromonal, vibrational, primal. It is not dominance through volume, but through gravity. The mature retainer's posture speaks of a man who has faced his own chaos and emerged composed. His silence feels like protection, his gaze like an invitation to stillness. Attraction in this context is no longer about heat, it is about depth. For centuries, men have searched for the code of true masculine power. It was never in the gym, the wealth, or the validation. It was always in the energy they wasted. Stored Sex is your initiation into that lost science. 170 plus pages, 8 transformative modules, activation phrases, and spiritual practices that teach you to refine desire into dominance and lust into luminous focus. Every ritual inside is designed to rebuild your biology, sharpen your mind, and awaken the primal fire buried beneath modern numbness. This is not reading, it's transformation encoded in language. Claim your copy through the link in the description or fixed comment, and join the first 10 men to receive the exclusive promotion. Your rebirth begins the moment you open the first page. Science explains part of it through biochemistry. Retention influences hormonal equilibrium, subtly altering pheromone output and even the electromagnetic field of the body. Spiritually, it refines frequency, the vibratory field that mystics have described for centuries. Archetypally, he embodies the wise warrior, not the reckless conqueror of his youth, but the man who guards energy as sacred property. Each gesture carries intention. Each word lands with weight. This magnetism transcends desire. What once provoked lust now inspires reverence. His presence no longer excites, it steadies. People don't crave his touch, they crave his clarity. The aura of a mature retainer becomes less erotic and more spiritual, a field of coherence in a world of noise. He no longer attracts through performance but through essence. What surrounds him is not admiration or fantasy, but respect, an instinctive recognition that this man has mastered something most never will. There is a stage when semen retention stops being about self-control and becomes about self-preservation. Science already acknowledges that male vitality declines with time. Muscle density, focus, and hormonal balance all shift after 30. But the men who practice long-term retention experience something that appears to defy this curve. Instead of depletion, they report renewal. Energy levels rise, sleep deepens, and the body starts to behave as if it has remembered a forgotten code of youth. Studies and anecdotal evidence align on one point. Retention enhances mitochondrial function, testosterone sensitivity, and dopamine regulation. These three forces dictate how alive a man feels. The more stable his internal chemistry, the less he is ruled by cravings and fatigue. Bone density strengthens, posture improves, and cognitive focus sharpens. In men who keep the practice for months, even facial structure and skin tone subtly shift. Tension leaves the muscles, the eyes regain brightness, and the body language projects certainty. What appears to others as aging reversed is simply energy redirected. On a neurological level, retention retrains the brain's reward system. Instead of seeking quick release, it learns to derive pleasure from purpose. Dopamine spikes that were once tied to fantasy now emerge from progress, creation, and discipline. This rewiring is what ancient Taoist and Vedic masters called longevity through energy discipline. They knew that every conserved drop of essence is a drop of life itself. Modern science calls it neuroplasticity. The ancients called it immortality of spirit. The mature man who retains does not compete with the young because he has left their economy entirely. Youth chases sensation, maturity channels it. The older retainer no longer burns energy for pleasure, he distills it into power. His life becomes slower but denser, quieter but more charged. He operates at a frequency that the younger cannot yet perceive, where time bends and fatigue dissolves. His body becomes proof that aging is not decline but refinement, and his presence announces it before he ever speaks. There comes a point when retention no longer feels like a practice. It becomes identity. The man who has walked through decades of distraction, indulgence, and loss finally stands in stillness, not as a monk detached from life, but as a sovereign within it. The new alpha is not the loudest, the fittest, or the most admired. He is the one who governs himself. His strength no longer depends on competition or attention, but on alignment. The battlefield has shifted from the outer world to the inner one, and mastery of energy is his only weapon. In the older man, retention transforms into the axis of balance. Hormones stabilize, thoughts clear, and emotions obey rhythm rather than chaos. Spiritual sensitivity deepens not as mysticism but as awareness of natural law. He moves with a kind of inevitability, guided by something that feels ancient yet intimate. People sense it, the calm that follows him, the steadiness in his tone, the absence of urgency. This is the energy of a man who no longer leaks his essence into the world, but lets it circulate inside him as sacred current. With time, retention reveals its final secret, what the ancients called the inner gold. The seed becomes the philosopher's substance, the light that refines both body and mind. Every day of discipline distills it further, turning it from biological matter into spiritual fire. The man who carries this gold walks differently, speaks differently, breathes differently. His power does not seek expression, it simply is. The arc completes itself here. When the young chase pleasure, the elder becomes power. This is not metaphor, but reality. Vitality rechanneled, desire transmuted, awareness awakened. The mature retainer no longer needs to prove his worth because his very existence proves it. He is living evidence that mastery over one's essence is the highest form of evolution. A man who turned his own body into the temple where eternity resides. The man who reaches this stage no longer measures progress in days of retention or in streak counts. He has transcended the concept of discipline as struggle. What once demanded effort now flows as nature. His biology has aligned with his will, and his energy moves according to a deeper intelligence. He no longer feels trapped between abstinence and indulgence because both extremes have dissolved. He simply lives in coherence, his body, mind, and spirit operating as one organism of purpose. This coherence radiates. When he enters a room, people pause, not because of status or physical form, but because something in him disrupts the usual hierarchy. He is not competing for attention, he anchors attention. It is the quiet dominance that cannot be faked, the gravity that emerges when a man has stopped negotiating with his own weakness. His presence speaks of battles won within, of nights conquered in silence, of storms faced without collapse. Every movement carries memory of restraint, and every restraint has turned into stored power. The modern world, obsessed with display, rarely understands this archetype. It calls him distant, cold, or detached, not realizing that what it perceives as detachment is in fact self-possession. He no longer seeks validation because he has seen what validation costs, the draining of essence for moments of applause. Instead, he seeks alignment. Every word he speaks must serve truth. Every action must conserve integrity. His leadership is quiet but unmistakable, like the pull of the moon on tides. There are books you read, and there are books that read you. Alchemy of the Gods is not literature, it is a portal. Within its pages burns the ancient science of transformation, the serpentine fire of Kundalini rising through the spine, the crystalline oil, that sacred secretion of the higher mind, awakening dormant intelligence and the long-forgotten path of spiritual liberation through the body itself. This is the manual of ascension written in the language of energy, not belief. Each chapter dismantles illusion, reprograms the nervous system, and reveals the sacred architecture of consciousness. Available in physical, digital, and audiobook formats, this is your chance to hold a key that was once reserved for initiates and mystics. Open it and the transformation begins. Not metaphorically, but biologically. Access the portal through the link in the description or the fixed comment, and cross the threshold between knowledge and embodiment. For those walking the path of inner mastery, the new audiobook Semen Retention Success Path is the definitive code. 2 hours of pure transmission divided into 6 deep themes: discipline, energy transmutation, focus, spiritual strength, emotional sovereignty, and divine purpose. This is not motivation, it's a map of rebirth. Every minute guides you to reclaim the power you leak daily and to turn it into force, clarity, and sacred drive. And for a limited time, you'll receive a 30% discount on the ebook, The Art of Semen Retention for Men, a practical guide of 20+ pages with exercises and techniques to ground this knowledge in your daily life. Find both through the link in the description or fixed comment and begin your transformation tonight. Biologically, his system operates with the efficiency of a well-tuned instrument. His endocrine glands, now harmonized through years of energetic conservation, secrete not chaos but clarity. Dopamine rewards discipline, not indulgence. Cortisol no longer governs his mornings. Serotonin flows naturally through stability of mind. The body, instead of fighting entropy, collaborates with it. He has become an ecosystem of renewal, where even rest feels charged with purpose. Aging, for him, is not decay, but distillation, every year stripping away noise until only essence remains. Spiritually, the transformation is even deeper. Retention opens the gates of higher perception, not through mysticism but through sensitivity. The mind becomes less reactive, more receptive. Silence, once uncomfortable, becomes nourishment. He begins to sense subtle currents in people, their emotional frequencies, their hidden intentions. He navigates life through intuition rather than impulse, as if guided by an invisible compass calibrated to truth. The mature alpha is not dominant because he overpowers, but because he perceives. His awareness becomes his authority. Join those who walk ahead. Become a member of the channel to receive early access, priority responses, and to support the mission that is awakening men worldwide. Each subscription fuels the movement. Each voice strengthens the brotherhood. You are not just watching. You are participating in the restoration of masculine consciousness. Relationships evolve under this vibration. Women sense the absence of desperation in him and are drawn not by charm, but by calm. His attraction is rooted in polarity, masculine stillness meeting feminine motion. He doesn't chase, he magnetizes. His energy does not demand, it invites. The dynamic shifts from consumption to communion. To stand near him is to feel time slow down, as if the nervous system itself recognizes safety. This version of manhood contradicts modern culture's shallow image of strength. True power, he understands, is not physical dominance but energetic containment. It is the ability to hold tension without collapse, to face chaos without reacting, to transform instinct into insight. In ancient traditions, this was the sign of kingship, not wealth, not lineage, but inner control. Retention is simply the mechanism through which that kingship reawakens. He becomes what ancient mystics called a living temple. His semen, once dismissed as flesh, has turned into spiritual gold. The subtle oils that rise through his spine fuel the illumination of mind, the clarity of intuition, the depth of speech. His aura grows thick, almost tangible. People may not understand it, but they feel it. The density of his presence, the weight of his silence, the unspoken command in his eyes. And in that silence, a paradox resolves itself. The pursuit of strength becomes the realization of peace. The mature alpha no longer seeks victory because he has already conquered the most elusive opponent, himself. His hunger has become purpose. His desire has become vision, and his retention has become revelation. He now understands that the true hierarchy of men is invisible, measured not by dominance but by self-mastery, not by wealth but by frequency. While the young burn their fire in brief displays, he burns his inwardly, sustaining light without smoke. His life becomes a slow blaze of awareness. So he walks through the world quietly, like a reminder of a forgotten order. His eyes carry the memory of chaos transformed into clarity. His voice carries the weight of energy turned to wisdom. He does not preach retention, he embodies it. And in his calm, others remember that greatness was never about what a man acquires, but about what he learns to contain. Because when the young chase pleasure, the elder becomes power. And in that power, time itself bows. Every man reaches a point where comfort becomes poison, and the familiar turns into a cage. The difference between those who awaken and those who fade lies in one moment, the decision to act. You can close this video and return to the noise, or you can recognize that this call was meant for you. If what you heard resonated in your bones, mark this moment. Leave your like as the seal of learning. Subscribe and activate the bell to enter the journey, and watch the next video, the continuation of your initiation.